Hi, I'm Yaakov Katz, and welcome to another episode of the Jewish People's Podcast by JPPI. When the rockets began falling in northern Israel and the north emptied out on October 8th, Nissan Zeevi stayed behind. This was back in 2023, just a day after the October 7th attack by Hamas. A tech entrepreneur from Kfar, Giladi, Zeevi had been leading one of Israel's most promising innovation hubs in Kiryat Shmona, transforming the Galilee into a food tech powerhouse and helping turn the region into what someone's called the next Tuscany. But since October 8th, his mission shifted. He heads now a grassroots movement dedicated to bringing life back to Israel's north, trying to convince families, businesses, young pioneers to return to the communities that some of which remain evacuated and empty, even though 2 years have passed since the war began. In this conversation, we talk about the exodus that changed the face of the Galilee, the fear that still keeps almost 20,000 people from coming home, and the quiet determination of those who refuse to abandon the border. Zeevi shares what it means to rebuild, not just the homes, but also the economy, as well as trust, confidence, and a sense of belonging on Israel's northern frontier. It's a different story from what we're used to when thinking about October 7th, but no less important. What is the future of Israel's north 2 years after the war began? Here we go. Thank you so much for joining the JPPI podcast. It's great to have you with us. And I'll be honest, I haven't told you this yet in our pre-conversations, but I heard about you because you gave a talk to my daughter's military unit in the IDF a couple months ago, and she came home that weekend and said to me, Abba, Dad, you have to talk to this person, Nissan Zeevi, who spoke to our unit. So inspiring, so moving, and someone who's doing so many incredible things in the north that I said, okay. I read up on who you were. We do not know each other beforehand, although I did have your phone number saved in my phone from your previous life as someone who used to work in high tech, and in my previous role back as editor of the Jerusalem Post. So we had been in touch once upon a time in the past. But after reading and seeing what you have done since October 7th and where you've put your resources, your investment, your time and energy is really remarkable. So I want you to take us back, if you can, Nissan. You are a resident of a community up in the north, Kfar Giladi. October 7th happens. That's the Hamas attack in the south. October 8th happens, and Hezbollah starts to launch its rockets into the north. War also comes to northern Israel, but maybe even more than just the war itself. Tens of thousands of people leave the north, and even 2 years later, with the quiet that we have in the north, many of those people have yet to return home. So I want you, if you can, take us back to October 8th, take us back to your own personal story, and how this all began, that you shifted focus from where you were in your life to somebody working in high tech, and in bringing investments and tech workers to the north to somebody whose focus now is getting people to come back home.
Yeah, I'm always describe it as this famous scene from Matrix when you have the blue pill and the red pill and the transformation of reality. So before October 7th, as you mentioned, I was the head of impact investment director at a big VC here in Israel, focusing on bringing investment and building startup here in the up north, the upper Galilee, in the northmost area of Israel, and convincing my wife from suburban Tel Aviv to move to the Galilee because this is Tuscany with the startups and a great weather and a great view and a great education. And we moved to the Galilee. We built more than 34 different companies, more than 700 high salary jobs. And we thought we cracked the code of how we can build an economic engine to the entire region based on the strength of the local, of the this specific region. And then October 7 came, and I think it took us maybe 5 minutes to lift our head from the Telegram and the WhatsApp and the horrific images of what we all saw on this Saturday, and to ask ourselves if Hezbollah is going to come from the north also. And another 2 or 3 hours later, our entire community, the community of Kfar Giladi, which is one of the oldest kibbutzim in Israel, established 108 years ago. A couple of hours later, we evacuated our entire community from here because we are located 800 meters from the border. and from a Hezbollah village called Adese. And on October 8th, I already got phone call, from my reserve unit telling me I will have another different mission. My new mission is Kitat Konenut, the emergency task force of Kfar Giladi, and all of a sudden we are all with uniform, rifle, and basically the only troops that here on the border between our communities and Hezbollah, because all the focus, as you know, was toward Gaza in the south, and our whole life turned upside down in a week. I'm always describe it as, we all know the Maslow pyramids of needs, and every layer, Jacob, every layer of this pyramid fall apart. The security, the community, the economy, the self-determination of who you are, everything went upside down, and we found ourselves as the soldiers who now need to protect the northeast border, actually with not so much equipment, by the way, thanks to the Jewish communities worldwide that helped us and to acquire all the protective gear that we need. We had something like 600 residents that were recruited to this emergency task force and actually hold the north border of Israel during the first 8 months. And I'm always saying that this entire time we faced a situation we never faced before, by the way, the evacuation, the decision to evacuate 52 communities, more than 65,000 people from their houses, from their communities. It was an unprecedented reality and decision. And basically, if you will summarize the war in the north, the only achievement of Hezbollah is this one decision made by our government to evacuate us for more than 14 months from our homes. Yes.
So I'm going to ask you for a second about the evacuation, but just before that, you said something how basically you were all alone. It was a group of soldiers, reservists, people like yourself, residents of Kfar Giladi, given a uniform, given an M16, a helmet, a flak jacket, whatever, and told, listen, you man the border. You said that there was nothing. What does that mean there was nothing? Explain to us for a moment. Where was the government? Where were the ministries? Where were the local councils? Where was the IDF? Literally, there was no one there. It was people doing it on their own.
So in the first 2-3 days, a lot of the reserve that were recruited to the army because of October 7th came to the north also. But after, I think, a week, we woke up in the morning and we saw that no one is here. The entire IDF went to the south. And this was the moment that we understood that the priority right now of the state of Israel, the government, is to manage the crisis in Gaza and to put all their effort in Gaza. And our job will be to hold the northern border until they will finish their job in the south. And basically hundreds of residents recruit to the army. We have some presence of course, of the IDF, but not in a significant amount that will build confidence about what's happening here on the border. And as you remember, in the first year, while the entire attention was in the south, we actually deal with a different reality when everyone is trying to force us to sign another fake agreement that will shut down the northern frontier right now and no one need to deal with it. And I think that the biggest lesson that we as the resident of the Galilee, was to not count on anyone else from now on. And I'm saying it as a person who had 100% trust in the 1701 resolution made by the Security Council of the UN, the US, Israel, France, and a lot of
United
other...
Nations Security Council 1701 that ended the 2006 Second Lebanon War was supposed to see Hezbollah pushed away from the border. UNIFIL, the United Nations Interim Force, peacekeepers were supposed to keep that border area clear, but as we know, Hezbollah was everywhere. Right.
they were everywhere, and again, we see ourselves also as responsible for the situation here. They were here and we didn't see them. We didn't saw them. They were there. But it was very comfortable for us to deal with the startups, with the chef restaurant, with the Tuscany atmosphere, and not see that 500 meters from me, the Radwan forces built their new base overlooking Kfar Giladi, for example.
So basically what you're describing to some extent, Nissan, is that October 7th blew up in our faces in the south. October 7th or 8th was also this recognition, for those at least in the north, was a recognition that we had also done the same thing, turning a blind eye to the north, and this had to be dealt with. And you very early founded this lobby called Lobby 1701, which is basically, during the war, meant to raise awareness and meant to make it clear that we can't go back to the way things were before October 7th, before the war in the south, but also to the extent in the north. We're talking about a year after the ceasefire went into effect in the north now, and Hassan Nasrallah was killed, the famous beeper pager attack that took place. We know that Hezbollah is still in existence in Lebanon. We know that there's a government now in Lebanon that does have the support of the Western superpowers, the United States, parts of Europe, and is at least publicly making it sound like they're doing an effort to crack down on Hezbollah, to collect the arms potentially of Hezbollah. We'll have to wait to see, of course, if that happens. Do you, as somebody, you're back in your house, your family's back in your house, in your home. Kfar Giladi, as I understand, is almost fully populated at this point. And we'll talk in a moment about some of the other communities because they're not like Kfar Giladi. But do you feel safer today? Do you feel that Israel understands that it can't go back to the way it was before October 7th, 2023?
So, it's all about expectation. I think that right now, the IDF, the army, and of course the government, they know what is our expectation as the resident of the Galilee. They know that we will not agree only for a sense of security. We want security. And this is the entire difference between what happened in the south and couldn't happen in the north. So after the lack of trust, the trust between us, the civilian, and the army and the government have been broken. And I think that during the pagers operation and then the IDF operation inside Lebanon, I think they rebuilt the trust with us, the resident of the Galilee. Most because how they did it, and I think it's rebuild the trust between us and the army. And now we can hear that the IDF is very how can I describe, proactive by enforcing the agreement and making sure that they are not coming back to this specific area. Just going to give you an example. The village next to my house called Adese. Adese, it's a village, 100% Hezbollah. By the way, it's an interesting story. They bought all the real estate from the Christian families. All the Christian families moved to New York and they relocate themselves, the Radwan forces, with their families 800 meters from here. And our biggest fear was that after an agreement, after the Israeli government signed an agreement of the ceasefire, that they will come back. Till now, they didn't come back. Everything is still flattened, and we can hear the drones of the IDF and the planes of the IDF making sure that no one is coming back to this specific area. So, in a very funny way, now when we're hearing bombs here on the border, it's actually building back our trust, because we know this is the IDF making sure that they are not coming back. So we are in a process of rebuilding the trust.
Again, I don't want to, I totally recognize, and I think it's the right move. We are now, as a country, we're much more proactive, as you said. We're also much more into preemptive. Israel sees there's every week a number of attacks by the Air Force in Lebanon. Israeli troops are still deployed in parts of Lebanon. But the question is, long term, do you think that that is something that's sustainable, that you can count on and rely on the government and the military? Because I think, as we know, Nissan, I mean, you described to us this Tuscany of Israel, the focus on the high tech. When quiet comes back, and if this war down south also ends and the region goes into a new path, Will Israel maintain the same level of vigilance? Are you a bit concerned that it might not?
So this is the biggest challenge we will be facing with, and from a civilian point of view. Okay, I'm not the government representative. Sure. I'm not the army representative. From a civilian point of view, I can tell you, Jacob, that we had like a shifting in the state of mind. We shift our state of mind, and we in a different reality. In this current reality, we know that we need, in one hand, to make sure that they are not coming back, Hezbollah forces, and on the other hand, to start reimagine and rebuild the Galilee. And we need to do this together. It's much more complex, for attracting young professional families to the Galilee. But the biggest lesson that we learn here, the civilians, is that we need to ask ourselves and to challenge our reason why. Why do we live here on the border? I don't have to live here on the border. I can live in Tel Aviv, Haifa, Ra'anana, anywhere I want. And when you're dealing with the question about the reason why I'm living here, you're dealing with, I think for the first time for our generation, the young professional families, we are dealing with question about ideology, reasons, about the meaning in life. And I'm always telling to my friends, from Tel Aviv, from the high-tech scene, that it's much more complicated to do startup here, but I'm living with a meaning. I have meaning in my life. I'm making sure that the most sensitive area in Israel will be with prosperity, will be with strong communities, and it's not Tuscany. We will not promote ourselves anymore, the Galilee, as Tuscany.
So take us for a moment to where are we right now? I mean, we're about 2 years into the war almost. Tens of thousands of people, you said 65,000 people from over 50 communities were evacuated from their homes, a decision that was made by the government. And I'm going to ask you, I want to know if you think that decision was the right decision or the wrong decision. So we'll get to that in a moment, because I have heard opinions that had people stayed in their homes, Israel would have done more, definitely in the beginning of the war, to create the security that was needed. I'll give you that opportunity in one moment to explain. But first, just give us the facts. Where are we right now in terms of how many people have returned to their homes, how many have not? There's a lot of stories. Kfar Giladi, as we mentioned, people are back. Kiryat Shmona, not so much. So what's happening?
So till now, from the 65,000 people that have been displaced and evacuated, came back something like 47,000, which means you have another 18,000 people that didn't come back yet, and probably, by the way, will not come back. Most of them are from the city of Kiryat Shmona, and the rest of the people are from the Moshavim. I think that the kibbutzim has proved themselves as a great format, a great model for community that can sit on the border, that can handle, even in a crisis, manage as a community. And Kiryat Shmona, which is the northmost city of Israel, that was in the middle of a process of becoming a city of students, of startups. Really, we thought that we're living in a dream. Right now, facing a catastrophe. Jacob, I don't have another word to describe the situation. Real catastrophe. Because people that were used to live in Kiryat Shmona for all their life were displaced to Tel Aviv or to Jerusalem, and all of a sudden they saw how the health system looked like, the education system looked like, the opportunities of employment, etc. Culture, transportation, etc. From one side, it's a crisis. From the other side, I can tell you that it's also an opportunity, because right now we know how life should look like here in the Galilee. And when I mentioned the term expectation, again I'm coming back to this term, expectation, we also have new expectation about how life should look like here, not only the security. So it's a challenging time. I can tell you that during the war, the decision to evacuate the people, in my opinion, but it's only my opinion, it was one of the most anti-Zionist decisions a government could ever take in these 76, 77 years of independence. It reflects the attack of Hezbollah, we saw more missiles toward places that were evacuated. For example, Nahariya, which is exactly the same distance as Kiryat Shmona from the border. They didn't evacuate Nahariya, not even one missile have hit Nahariya. They saw wherever Israel evacuated people, they target their missile to these locations. So a very, very bad decision that, just think about my children. 2 children, 6 years old, 9 years old, all of a sudden with no education system, refugees in their own state, live in a small room for more than a year. During the summer of 24, me and some of my friends, we decided we had enough. We established the movement Habaita, coming back, and we start telling people, encouraging people to come back and not wait for a formal decision from the government. We brought here hundreds of families that came back to their house, and all of a sudden we had some boots on the ground, people in this community that can actually help us also with the security measures to see if Hezbollah is coming back or not. And this was the foundation of one of the most moving initiative in Israel. More than 6,000 people volunteer to help us to fix and to clean the abandoned communities and to prepare themselves, to prepare these kibbutzim, moshavim, and cities to the coming back of hundreds and then thousands of people.
So before all this happened, Nissan, you were a VP at the Margalit Startup Center, if that's what it's called. You guys were very much focused, if I remember, in Kiryat Shmona, on food tech, right? And creating some sort of like food tech hub or accelerator in Kiryat Shmona, bringing, like you mentioned in the beginning, tech companies and you said, I think, lucrative jobs and high-paying jobs. Is all that gone? Is it possible to rebuild? Is it possible to rehabilitate and get that back up and running?
So I think this is one of the most challenging process that we are now facing with. Before the war, we had more than 74 startups in this region. 80% of them were food tech and ag tech. And then when the evacuation started, they have all been evacuated. And of course, as you know, none of these companies will wait more than a year to come back. They need to keep moving forward. So now we need to convince them to come back. And the way to do it is depend on 2 different elements. One, of course, it's security. We need to rebuild their trust and our trust in the reality here from a security point of view. And second, is huge incentives that will encourage them to do this process of coming back. Right now we have 14 different startups that already came back, and I know that there is another 25 startups in the process of coming back, but the rest of them are not coming back, and we will need to rebuild and reimagine and reinvest in building a new ecosystem. We have the foundation, we have the knowledge, and I'm sure, Jacob, that we're going to build it back better, and we're going to do it with the help of the private sector and the government. I think that in 2 years from now, you're going to come here for a live podcast, and I will present to you some of the most cutting-edge companies here in the Galilee.
So, Nissan, before I let you go, what is it that you would now, because I know you're very much still focused on, so I know that right now you're very much focused on getting people back to their homes, but what would you like to see if we had government ministers who were listening to us and people from the Knesset, or, what is it that you want them to do that maybe they're not doing that could change things and help improve the reality? What would you like to see more from the government?
I think what we all want to see now is to change the priority. Trumpeldor, which was a famous Jewish hero, said 100 years ago, where the last tree will be, the last border will be. And we are saying where the last startup will be, the last border will be, which means they need to start prioritize the Galilee as a national interest, and to create a differential incentive as close you are to the border, the more incentive you get. Okay? If you are a founder of a startup and you are located in Tel Aviv, if you relocate yourself to Kiryat Shmona, you will get 10 times more incentive or grants from the government. Right now, it's not happening. And I think that the most important thing we all need to do, reimagine the Galilee, which means, a lot of people speaking about, in Hebrew, there is a term, Tmunat Atid, an image of the future. And it's really easy to say it, but it's really hard to implement it. How an image of the future look like. And what we in the Baita movement are now focusing is to build tangible project that will be a magnet, not only for young professional families, but also for ministries to take part and to be partner in the rehabilitation and the growth of the Galilee. We understand that the government cannot be the initiator, but they could be a great partners. So, for example, we are now building a new center of excellence for startups in the Agmon market, which was a commercial zone which was abandoned during the war. We are bringing now 14 different companies from Tel Aviv that are opening branches over here, and we expecting the government to help these companies to get the tailor-made package regarding incentive, housing, etc. And I think that it's up to us. It's up to us, the civilian. We need to make sure that hope will be contagious. And by that, making sure that the government will follow us and not us following the government.
Yeah. Nissan Zeevi, I now understand why my daughter was so impressed. So I have to really thank you for joining us and giving us this perspective. What life is like there a year now after the ceasefire, a year after the war pretty much ended in the north, and hopefully as we are in a process of ending the war in the south. So let me thank you again, Nissan, for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. And if I can just add another message for everyone who is watching, each one of you has an historic role in rebuilding the Galilee. Take part. We are here with you. We want you as partners. Come to the Galilee and help us in this historic initiative to rebuild the Galilee.
Thanks for joining me on today's episode. You can find us, as always, where podcasts can be found: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and, of course, the website of Times of Israel. Give us a 5-star ranking. It would mean a lot. Share it with your friends and family, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Jewish People's Podcast. In the meantime, continue, hopefully, to enjoy the Sukkot holiday, and as always, we look forward to good news from the talks in Egypt regarding a potential end to the war in Gaza.